for when I'm working with other people, I will take the time to listen. Is that what you mean?
Yes.
Is that, and not,
and also ask questions,
yeah,
right? I think it links back to a previous point that you said, like, if you do have a certain understanding of something, then being saying, this is how I understand it, is this correct?
Yeah.
So there's that element of clarity, which is part of any collaborative work.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's a big learning there. I think one of the reasons I also ask is, I remember earlier this year, I was lecturing my first years, and I introduced the symbol B, which is a discount factor in actuarial science. And I thought I had introduced it well, like I just said, this is what V means, it's just a symbol.
Yeah.
And the next lecture, the class rep came to me and said, no, ma'am, no one understands what a V is. And I was like, what is there to understand? I just said, this is what it's defined as.
Oh, yeah.
But they wanted to know how it was derived. And I was like, I need to actually explain that it's not a derivation, it's a definition. So there's no logic to it. And I think that was a learning for me, because in a language, you do define words, right? But often you say, this is what it's connected to.
Yeah.
Whereas V wasn't connected to anything. It was just a symbol that we used for shorthand. And I realized that I needed to position that, otherwise there was confusion.
Yeah.
Because that isn't how people learn languages.
Yeah.
And what I am teaching is language. So very interesting thought there. I think another thing you said, which I'd love to sort of double click on, is at the end of each year, that element of reflection where you say, have I mastered what I should master? How does the student actually go about sort of being honest about that? You could look at a set of marks and be like, I got firsts for everything. I must have mastered it. But you possibly couldn't have, maybe you just did the right past papers or something. How do you actually ascertain that level of proficiency?
Yeah. I think that's a more difficult one, because number one, you write the exams, and after the exams, there's no class. So there's no space with other learners to be able to do that reflection. I think that a lot of that work is not after the last exam. It's in the build up to it.
Yeah.
It's in the preparation. It's in all the class spaces where you could ask, you could share the fact that you understand how an equation makes sense or whatever.
Yes.
But you have no idea how it fits into the
broader scheme of
things. So you have identified a gap.
Yes.
So you have also identified you're very good at following a formula.
Yes.
And so you can get that correct as per the mathematical formula. But the minute that is set in a paragraph of words, of language, you're unable to extract what that is and what the key concepts are. What am I looking for? What is it? What is X? What am I solving for? So that really can tell a student. And that's where I think we can't over-rely on marks to tell us whether we are playing to our strengths or not.
Yes.
The student should be able to say, I'm having difficulty with this.
Yeah.
Where do I seek assistance, support? Can I go to the numeracy center? Is there a maths tutor whom I can talk to? And that's where I think the metacognition comes in, the awareness of how you are approaching something. Where are the gaps in the thinking, in the concepts, in the doing?
Yeah, and the connectivity. And also, I think something that I always try to say to students is you're building one skill set. Like, it has many different facets, but you shouldn't just see them as being unconnected or these silos. But how do you go about connecting?
Yeah, I don't think there is a formula for that.
And actuaries learn that. So that's why it's sad.
The connection is happening in between the detail.
Yeah.
It's a kind of back channel thing that happens, that you can always just assess when something is put in front of you explicitly. But you can't really measure in between exercise A and exercise B how much you have absorbed, taken in or applied until you're given the next problem.
Yeah.
So I think the point is, for me, presence and absence are two concepts that are very important. Sure. So when you're talking about presence, we always pay a lot of attention to what you can see, what is done, how the teacher is teaching, how do I do in the exam. We don't give attention to the point that wherever something is happening, something is not happening.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, by definition.
Right? So there's always the presence of absence. Right? So when you're looking at how I did in this test and these marks are a concrete reflection, it is about what didn't happen as well. Right? Where are the gaps? And equally, on the positive side, you can say, wow, my first test, I got, 50%. My second test, 80%. I have done a lot of work. So in reflection, even on those two sets of marks as an indicator, you can almost measure the growth that has happened in between, right? And so it is in that process that you're connecting all the time. I'm moving to the next level. I've got deeper understanding, right? But I think that maybe it is the expression of that in class discussions. It's in the examples that are given. It's the way one thinks about problems that one can. And that's why I say it's a kind of invisible, silent process that's happening that only becomes visible once you're faced with the task. But not to assume that when students are silent in class, while things are being said, that there's not a lot of learning going on. I think there's often a lot of learning going on. Yeah. Because for some students, it's very high stakes to be able to keep up and to keep pace. Yeah. Even if they may not be able to articulate whether they're doing it well or what the problems are. So the catchment areas, I think on both sides, for the teacher and the student, must be those spaces where you can double check. Am I moving in the right direction? Who might be the best person to reflect for me? Yeah, my understanding of this. Do we have learning buddies? Am I learning in a group? Is there a learning mentor? Is the tutor forming that thing? It can't just be the student on their own, in their minds, and they face the lectures and the assessment, and that's it. So building the learning cultures, I think, is a very important thing about collaborative learning, right? And how we learn in groups and all of that. And I think that, even corridor spaces, if students could, outside the classroom, so outside the formal spaces, if students can find these mini groups that they sit with and just work through, okay, so why don't we from 2 to 3 work on a problem together? And let's just hear how we're thinking through that. So as a peer learning ability, that is a very good indicator of whether things are connecting or not connecting, etc. Sometimes we value, I'm not sure in your class, maybe you can talk to that, we value the peer learning and collaborative, etc., in terms of the social benefits. But we don't often award marks for that in the assessments or the assignments. And so maybe if we paid more attention to use of group work, right, and valued it, then students would also think, okay, this is not an individual learning, that I have to learn with and learn together. Because sometimes a student might be able to explain certain things in a language that will just make it click so easily for me.
And also less daunting. Yeah. I think then engaging with, let's say, an academic or
correct,
like a more authoritative figure.
So I think maybe it's important at the beginning of the year when the lecturer is setting up the class orientation, rules of engagement, to actually tackle the purpose of the lecture. What is the lecture trying to do? Yes. How much can you get out of the lecture? Is this going to be the sole place where you access information? So on a spectrum, where does the lecture sit? Where's the tutorial? Where's the textbook? Where's the reading? So it's a whole host of learning components. And for each student, it might be different. For some students, the tutorial might be the most important place. Because that's where they hear the translation of the lecture, if you know.
And where they feel more comfortable to ask questions.
Correct. For other learners, the textbook might be the thing. That's how they're
like, this is my Bible of things I need to learn.
So each person, I think each student must figure out as they are developing and mastering and maturing in that discipline, what is my bouquet? What is the host of components that I need? This is not just learning styles, I think the learning styles scholarship is a little bit dated. We don't want to invest too much in whether I'm auditory. Yes, I think we all use a host of different learning styles. But learning what works for you.
Yeah.
Across a whole spectrum of, I'm calling it components, but different,
It's tools that you have, right?
Yeah.
That are available to you for learning.
Yeah. That must come together for each person in a unique way.
Yeah.
So they are playing to their strengths, and they're also getting the support for the parts that are problematic or need more strengthening.
I think something that you are sort of indicating, but something I want to sort of forefront for our listeners, is the importance of also active learning. And I think, it's so often students will be like, I attended the lectures and I attended the tuts and I did this and this. And they're like, why am I doing badly? And it's like, my question often is, okay, well, what is your posture when you're in the lecture? Are you listening? Are you making notes? What is your posture in the task? Are you literally sitting there waiting to be let out, kind of thing?
Yeah.
So can you speak to the sort of thought around active learning and how to make sure and sort of gauge whether you are an active learner or whether you need to kind of gear up?
That's really a very important question, Margaret. And also, if you think about where we're going now, where we are now, right? So if I'm looking at a first-year class, and they're mainly 19-year-olds, right, with all the exceptions, would it be safe for me to say that this generation is more open to multimodal forms of learning, right? They could listen to music and write an essay and read and do lots of things compared to me.
No, it's okay.
Right? So, in a sense, student agency or agency in any kind of form, i.e. making active choices about what I'm going to do and putting those actions into process, is very much a part of the classroom demeanor than it was 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I went into a lecture to write down every word the lecturer was saying. I didn't have Google, I didn't have internet, I couldn't check the information, I didn't know what was transcribing. Yeah, because the lecture was positioned as the expert. But I went in, spent 40 minutes just absorbing. It was a different world. Okay? Now that we have so much of information, there's an overload. The question for the Gen Zs or the Gen Alphas or whatever is not about volume. It's about selection.
Yes.
Discretion.
Yes.
The skill has changed now. We've got too much of information. Your abilities to know which
decipher.
Yeah. Which parts are relevant.
Yes.
How can I connect the dots, etc. So you cannot sit in a today's class with a 20-year-old repertoire of what people used to do then.
I agree.
So if students want to be current and they want to be relevant, they have to change the way learning has been depicted
to them.
Movies, through their parents, grandparents, etc. It's no longer a passive activity.
Yeah.
You have to take charge. As young people are taking charge of their lives, businesses on the side. It's not untoward for them to be in absolute charge of their learning as well.
Yeah. And I think something that you're saying there, which I think is an important thing to kind of highlight, is that element of responsibility, right? Is that you actually have to build up your own understanding. It's not a lecturer's responsibility actually to build that for you. They're there to showcase and to introduce and to, show you the novelty of what it is that you're doing and the nuance, but you actually have to build that. And I think so often, especially our younger students, is they're used to being handheld in that process. And now when I'm standing in front of my first years, there's 250 of them. I cannot hold your hands. You have to, I'm like, okay, we did compound and simple interest. I showed you how the two are compared. Now go do a couple of sort of like examples yourself and maybe go watch a YouTube video and, ask a mate and do the tags and that sort of thing. But it's not a natural flow for most students because they are used to someone else curating that for them.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think part of the first year lecturer's responsibility is to do the transition work as well, in explaining and that we on another level here compared to matric.
Yeah.
And even though you spent a lot of time on, the top of your learning curve, in a sense, you're starting in another place now.
Yeah.
which is learning a whole new way, a whole new set of, ways. So